Today about the anatomy of the respiratory system. We're going to start at the nose, and here you can see the nostrils or nares in orange. They're the openings to the nose and are helped formed by the nasal bone and hyaline cartilage. Going into the nose, you can see the nasal cavity, which is separated by the nasal septum. You can see visually the nasal septum when you look up someone's nose, as pictured here. The nasal conchae are the folds within the nasal cavity containing blood vessels that warm the air as it enters and the mucus that moistens the air. The conchae are separated by nasal meatus, which are the passageways for the air. The green here is the meatus, while the purple represents the conchae. The nasal cavity has mucous membranes made of pseudostratified columnar epithelium and cilia. Now we'll move down to the pharynx. The pharynx carries air between the nasal cavity and the larynx. There are tonsils here that aid in immunity and protection. Starting at the nasopharynx, this is the path for air and is lined with pseudostratified columnar epithelium and cilia. The next section of the pharynx contains the oropharynx, which has a thicker lining of stratified squamous epithelium, as it is a passageway for both air and food. The stratified squamous epithelium can handle more abrasions. The last section of the pharynx is the laryngopharynx, which is also a pathway for both food and air, so it is also lined with stratified squamous epithelium. Next, we have the larynx. The larynx carries air between the pharynx and trachea, produces sounds, and prevents food from entering the trachea. It is lined with pseudostratified columnar epithelium that is ciliated. The airway that surrounds the larynx is called the glottis. The larynx has vestibular folds, which are muscles that protect the airway and block the food from entering the trachea. The vocal cords in the larynx produce sounds. The top portion of the larynx is called the epiglottis. It has elastic cartilage and prevents food from going into the trachea. It does this by directing air into the glottis and food into the esophagus. The thyroid cartilage, or Adam's apple, has hyaline cartilage and is found in the vocal cords. The cricoid cartilage has hyaline cartilage and connects the larynx to the trachea. The trachea connects the larynx and the bronchial tree and is a pathway for air to get to the lungs. It is a tube of C-shaped rings made from hyaline cartilage that help with supporting the trachea. This is referred to as the windpipe. The trachea is lined with pseudostratified columnar epithelium that is ciliated. The trachea will split into two sections at the end, which will become the left and right bronchi. Now we'll dive into the bronchial tree. These are tubes that carry air in and out of the deep tissues of the lungs. Bigger pathways of consist of hyaline cartilage, while the smaller pathways consist of smooth muscle tissue that is held open. In the beginning of the bronchial tree, it has ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelium, but as the branches get smaller, it changes to stratified cuboidal. At the top of the bronchial tree, it splits from the trachea into two paths. These are the left and right main bronchi and carry the air in and out of the lungs. These two branches split again into lobar bronchi that go into each lobe of the lung. The right lung has 3 lobar bronchi and the left has 2. The right consists of the superior, middle, and inferior lobar bronchi, while the left has the superior and inferior lobar bronchi. These branches then continue to split again into many small branches that go into the lobe called the segmental bronchi. All 3 branch types are supported by hyaline cartilage. Splitting of the branches continues, so the segmental bronchi split even further into bronchioles. Bronchioles no longer have supportive cartilage and are smooth muscles lined with ciliated cuboidal tissue. Branching from bronchioles are terminal bronchioles. Terminal bronchioles lack goblet cells and are still smooth muscle and cilia. They are an air passageway. Next, terminal bronchioles branch into respiratory bronchioles. They start to lose their smooth muscle and cilia. On the respiratory bronchioles are alveoli. These are microscopic air sacs and are at the end of the alveolar ducts. There are millions of alveoli on each lung, and they are the site of gas exchange. Alveoli are composed of squamous alveolar cells that form simple squamous epithelium and are used in gas exchange, and also form the respiratory membrane with the endothelium of the blood capillaries. Alveoli are also composed of gray alveolar cells, which produce the fatty fluid cervicant, which prevents alveoli from sticking together and helps them re-expand during inhalation. The last cell of the alveoli is the macrophages, which are white blood cells that clean dust and bacteria from the alveoli. The squamous alveolar cell and endothelium of the capillaries share a basement membrane, which makes up the respiratory membrane and allow for gas diffusion among alveoli and capillaries. Lungs are divided into lobes. The right lung has 3 lobes, the superior, middle, and inferior lobes, while the left has 2 lobes, the superior and inferior lobes. Lungs are surrounded by the pleural membrane and contain all of the branches from the bronchial tree. The pleurae surrounds the lungs and line the thoracic cavity. It is a serous membrane. Visceral pleura surround the lungs, while parietal pleura surround the thoracic cavity. The space between them is the pleural cavity, which contains serous fluid. The pleurae reduce friction, create a pressure gradient for lung expansion, and prevent infections from spreading throughout the respiratory system.